Hello, my name is DrPaulCottrell, and I'm recording this on October 11th. We're going to recap what's been going on for the Friday news. It's really important. We have new tariffs that are going to be placed on China on November 1st, a major market sell-off that took place in different asset classes. Crypto sold off, equity sold off. Bonds did rally, so there's now the negative correlation between equities and bonds. That's a positive aspect to this news, because if it was positively correlated instead of negatively correlated, that would have been even further issues with the financial markets. We have a tenuous peace plan in the Middle East to cover. There's this issue with Macron and his government. He might have to do another snap election. And we have Letitia James being indicted or charged. Yeah, charged for issues with the mortgages. Now, my understanding is it's not so much the mortgage fraud, it's actually tax fraud. Because the way she did her taxes, it was based as if she stated that it was a second home for the mortgage and then wrote it off as a business expense when renting it out. So there's a lot to cover. That's not the only news that we're going to be covering. Please help support the work that I do by making sure that you subscribe to all my channels. I have 4 channels on YouTube: Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. You can follow me on X and on GETTR. You can also follow me on Substack and Patreon. If you like the content that I create and you're making some money based on the advice I give you in the markets, please help support the work by donating. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee. You can also purchase the great products I offer. I have ebooks, supplements, and course material on immunology and pulmonology. If you pay attention to how to stack the supplements, you're going to be able to boost up your immune system, slow down the aging process, and target other systems: cardiovascular system, brain function, musculature. So if you just pay attention to the protocol, you'll be able to benefit from it. Please ask your social media to follow me and share the links. With that, again, I have also TikTok and a new channel for Substack. All the links are in the description of this video and all my videos. So please help support the work that I do. Greatly appreciate it. All right, we're going to start off with Fox News, where reporters were asking questions in the Oval Office about the 100% tariff increase on China goods starting November 1st.
To put in new export controls on rare earth minerals, and they've stopped buying soybeans from the U.S. What do you hope to get out of that meeting now with President Xi?
Well, we'll see. We import from China massive amounts, and maybe we'll have to stop doing that. But I don't know exactly what it is. Neither do you. Neither does anybody. It's a little pursuit.
Now there's a threat, possibly of 100% tariffs on China, and maybe not meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping at APEC. Joining us tonight to talk about tariffs, trade, and China is U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer. Mr. Ambassador, thanks for coming on. What's the status tonight with the U.S. and China and trade?
Well, Brett, you've seen the president's truths today. I've been there with him throughout the day, working with him on a response. What the Chinese have done, in short, is in the past couple of days, they've ordered the entire world that they have to submit for approval and permission by the Chinese government to export any kinds of materials that include rare earths that have been touched, processed, mined by China. So this could include cars, it could include microwaves that have chips, it can include defense materials. So China has taken this action, which is quite extreme. And so President Trump obviously wants to safeguard U.S. national and economic security. And so we have to take our own countervailing action.
I want to play something about President Trump in recent days, talking positive about what was happening Nicholas?
We have big advantages over China for lots of different reasons, and I think we're doing very well with China. I get along very well with President Xi if those countries are hostile. And by the way, China hasn't been. We've made deals with China. President Xi was great. We're doing very well, as you know, with the trade deals. We're doing very well with China. Great respect for President Xi.
So what happened? I mean, you've met with the Chinese. Treasury Secretary Bessent has met with the Chinese, came out of the last meeting suggesting that there was significant progress. Why the change?
That's exactly right, Brett. For the past 6 months, well, just to go back a little bit, 6 months ago, China took an action like this with respect to rare earth magnets. And over the past 6 months, we've been quite successful in securing the regular flow of those magnets to China. We've managed to have a fragile truce with China with respect to tariffs, where we continue to have high tariffs on China, but we're able to talk to them and have great communication. This action that recently happened, I mean, listen, China, negotiating with China is not like playing patty cake. On the one hand, they have a meeting with President Trump coming up, or they have one coming up. And on the other hand, they truly seek to acquire domination over global technology supply chains. This is a move clearly that they had in their pocket for a long time, and they thought that it was the appropriate time to deploy it before this meeting. And I think they've really miscalculated what they've done here.
There's a lot of, obviously the markets were really spooked by this today. There are a lot of businesses, there are farmers about soybeans, there are all kinds of different things that hinge on China and the US and the established trade agreements. Who has the leverage here? Is it the rare earth minerals hinge, or is it our ability to sell or not sell chips to China or technology to China? Where is the leverage here about getting to a deal?
Well, first of all, I would say that China's economy is floating on the idea that they can continue to produce and export huge amounts of excess capacity, frankly, of manufactured goods, and send them to overseas markets. The United States is the #1 consumer, the #1 importer. We are the dumping ground for Chinese goods. And so that is huge leverage. In fact, this is why they came to the negotiating table back in May the first time, when we had very high tariffs on them. It's actually not our desire to do that. Our desire is to have a healthy, balanced trading relationship with China that's fair, but it's a rocky road getting to that. We have a market. They have a government that's running the economy of their country. We have a free market, and for them, it's a government. Yeah.
I mentioned soybeans. You met with the Farm Bureau yesterday to talk soybeans and more. There's real panic over the loss of Chinese buyers. Where is the U.S. on that issue for farmers?
Sure. So one of the things that we're doing, which is so important, is we're opening foreign market access in additional countries. For example, Vietnam has already lowered its tariffs on soybeans. Cambodia has lowered its tariffs on soybeans. We're in talks with several other Asian nations to do that. We're also talking within the White House about domestic uses for soybeans. The challenge is when China takes actions like this, it uses economic coercion to try to influence American politics. Everyone's just trying to make a living here. Our farmers are the victims of Chinese economic coercion, and it's unfortunate, right? And we're trying to find a way through this.
Back in April, there was this pause, and back then, Peter Navarro, the White House senior trade counselor, said we get the potential here to do 90 trade deals in 90 days. As you look at the graphic, the trade deals that have been finalized, there have really only been 7 official agreements that have been reached. So for the people who look at that and say, this is a danger sign, looking at 2026, what do you say to them?
Sure. So first of all, the deals we've reached cover a huge percentage of U.S. trade with Canada and Mexico.
Most of the deals are large countries and large trading powers. Some of the smaller ones, not so much. The big elephant in the room is obviously China. Not all countries, not all 90 countries are equally weighted in terms of importance.
A lot of the trade between Canada and Mexico is flowing quite freely. Canada had some retaliation, which they removed. We had Turkey that had retaliation they removed. So there's actually no more retaliation in the world except for China. Some of these deals, President Trump is going through Southeast Asia at the end of the month to sign some with Malaysia, hopefully Cambodia, Thailand, and others. So we're making quite good progress on that front, and a lot of countries have already taken their tariffs down.
My concern is Trump losing support with the farmers in rural America, because these tariffs are hurting the farmers. Now, there's been some talk that some tariff revenue should go to the farmers to help support their plight. So I'm probably for that. You know, I had to sit down and think about it a little bit more, but using tariff revenue to help support our farmers, because the tariffs are hurting their export sales, I think is potentially a good idea. But there's a bigger issue here, and that is, if we continue to be on this footing where we are not becoming masters of our own destiny in terms of our economic prowess, our military prowess, building the economic clustering back into the United States, we're going to be weaker when when the war does happen in the Pacific. It's not if, it's when. And one of the military companies in the United States, from the United States, the CEO just mentioned that American companies need to realize that they need to decouple from China, and they need to decouple from China soon. Well, if you have a defense contractor, a defense company from the United States saying this, don't you think that they are privy to information that most people are not? Because obviously they have to go through security clearances and all this stuff. They know things that you don't know. It's really important to start decoupling from China. But you'll have investors, now you'll have the investor class that thinks that they're going to be able to continue on with the FDI and maybe invest in China and all this stuff. You may get a potential blip up in your revenue for your portfolio, but in the long run, it's going to hurt you. So it's better off to stay away from the international markets. So my recommendation is stay domestic in terms of equities. Probably be a little bit more on the small cap side. I've been focused more on the S&P 500, but this whole new tariff regime that's going to be kicked in potentially on November 1st is going to cause some market turmoil. So it's probably better to continue dollar cost averaging in and wait it out. But so much new dynamics that have emerged from Friday's trade that we have to see what happens in the Asian session on Sunday night and what happens in the morning session in the United States on Monday morning. I suspect that it sells off. So it's probably best to do some dollar cost averaging when that sell-off is happening. And then it'll mean revert. So this is another chance to get another bit of yield by year end. The probability of the S&P 500 being at 7,000 has diminished. It's now maybe only 20%. I was at the 30%, maybe 35% mark. Probably 15 to 20% now for probability of that. I'm still at a target of 6,800, but it is predicated on what happens on Monday and Tuesday. What's in the news? What's happening with the institutional investors? Are they buying in on the dip? Now, they can't let the market keep on going down because they'll close the year out potentially negative. That will hurt their fundraising for their funds. Because when they publish for their marketing materials for 2026, it's going to show a potentially negative return in 2025. So they're going to do the best that they can to keep the market up. Now, there may be a more severe sell-off in the first quarter or second quarter of next year. But I still think that they were going to be at around 6,800 for the S&P 500 by year end. All right, let's continue.
Is this now a trade war with China?
Yes.
Well, we'll see. It does not have to be, but we're ready to do that if necessary. We think the American people are up to it. The reality is, China doesn't have to have this approach. We can have a balanced relationship with China, but it needs to change aspects of its economy where it produces too much, uses unfair trading practices, and it tries to coerce everyone into doing what it wants. I think we can have a better relationship. The president and President Xi have a great relationship. We actually have good conversations with our counterparts, but we are in the middle of, finding out where each other's lines are, and we need to take this time over the next few days to see if there's a way forward. But if not, we're going to take strong action, just like the president signaled.
Does this put the TikTok deal in jeopardy?
No.
That is a separate issue, I believe. Now, that being said, if things escalate, to a different point, then, who knows what's going to happen. At this point, that has not been part of the discussion. That has not been pulled off the table.
Ambassador, we appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe
All
to
right.
Fox News
We're gonna-
YouTube page. Okay.
We're going to pivot over to the issues with France and its politics. Now, the reason why we need to pay attention to this is instability in Europe. There's debt instability with France. It's starting to creep up with Germany, and definitely debt instability with the UK. And there's political instability between the UK and France. The people are upset with the economic doldrums that these countries have created. In addition, you have central banks, the B of E, the Bank of England. They want to do quantitative tightening. They can't because the bond yields are too high. But yet the government needs to issue more debt. And they're not willing to do the hard choices of taxing the uber wealthy and cut social programs. The same problem in France. So the question is will this create instability globally? I think it will. Now you put that in the context of this trade war with China and the desire of Xi to control Taiwan, and you have a series of variables that are starting to emerge that may actually amplify each other that leads to world conflict. And that's not even bringing in the Middle East or Ukraine. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, help support the work that I do and help support your health and wellness. Get the structural nano silver soaps. You can get it in peppermint and in lavender. I also have it in charcoal tea tree and lemongrass. These are structural nano silver soaps, very high quality, very important use year round, but especially during the fall and winter. I also have structural nano silver toothpaste. Get a few tubes of this toothpaste for your household. This will whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, help with the health of your gum line, and reduce inflammation at the gum line. It's made from structural nano silver, has no fluoride. It's the best toothpaste that you're going to be able to get. Use this every day, but especially during the fall and winter. Why? Because it neutralizes. You're going to need that. Your other toothpaste doesn't. Please go to my store and get the cleanse. This is 30 parts per million, or the max 35, which is 35 parts per million. Use it every day, teaspoon a day, swish it in your mouth, gargle 20 seconds, then swallow it. What this will do is improve your oral cavity, improve your oral pharynx, help with your epithelial lining, and maintain your mucosal barrier. This will help to boost up your immune system. In addition, if you're not feeling well or someone around you is not feeling well, especially during the fall and the winter, take a tablespoon or two a day, apply it the same way. Swish it in your mouth, gargle, swallow. All right? Do this every day. I've been doing this protocol for over 5 years. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. Be prepared for the fall and the winter. It's really important.
Hello and welcome to the program. A few weeks ago, we were pointing out how unheard of it is for France to have 4 prime ministers in barely a year. Little did we know that the latest one would last less than a month. Well, this whole political mess, of course, has implications for the French economy and for the country's standing in Europe. And few people are better placed to evaluate those things than my guest. Thierry Breton was the EU's influential commissioner for the internal market and industrial policy during the first von der Leyen Commission. He was also France's Minister for the Economy, Finance and Industry from 2005 to 2007. In addition, he's had a distinguished career in business. Welcome to the program, Mr. Breton. Thank you very much. When you were minister 20 years ago, you were already warning the French public that their taxes could end up simply servicing the French debt. And it seems that to this day, people don't really want to hear that out there in the country.
Well, I did it for 2 reasons. The first one is that, of course, at that time when I joined the Ministry of Finance, the debt versus GDP was 67%, and we had signed a commitment. We signed a commitment, like all the members of the Eurogroup, that we should go below 60% of debt versus GDP, and of course, to target zero deficit, not -3, zero deficit. We allowed exceptionally to go up to 3%, but the target was 0. And this is why I said to my team, look, this is what we have to do. And we reduced, you're right, we reduced the debt versus GDP, moving from 67 down to 63. At that time, Germany was at 67. We had the same crisis from both sides of the Rhine River. We had the same subprime issues, debt problems, COVID impact. And now we are at 100.
This is the point that I'm making.
Debt.
Because of these financial crises, they've loaded up a lot of fiscal stimulus from the government that was paid for by issuing debt. And the central banks were buying assets to prop up the economy. This was worldwide. Happened during Lehman. It happened during COVID. In the United States, during the crisis of 2020, the balance sheet grew for the Federal Reserve by 53. I think it was 53% because of the crisis. And they had tons of assets on the balance sheet from the Lehman crisis that happened in 2008. So we are still feeling the effects of these 2 major financial hits. And so weak countries like France and UK, in terms of finances and politics, they're starting to crack. They're starting to break down. They're not strong enough to be able to weather the storm.
GDP, Germany is at 62. So it means that probably something is wrong with us. And we need to be very candid and to say this to our public opinion, to say that probably the way we handle here in France our social benefits, when I was speaking about social benefits, it is inherited from what we had to do to rebuild the country after the World War II. And we did it, and it was extremely important. But today we cannot afford to pay it this way. So we need to keep the objective, but to discuss together how to reduce our spending.
You mentioned Germany. I wonder how you think the Germans are looking at this whole crisis in France. We know that Germany recently considered no longer pursuing the SCAF fighter jet joint program with France. Do you think that's a sign that Germany is losing confidence in the French political and economic system?
No, I don't think we need to mix everything, and especially in defense. But we'll see. SCAF is not over for me. We need probably to discuss. I think it's a very good project. But that's another issue. We could discuss defense, and that's a totally different issue.
Yeah.
But the matter is that when you are a founding member of the union, like France, I mean, you need to behave by example. And it's true that since 20 years, we don't keep our commitment, and this is why I think that it is extremely important to go back to what we have to do. Of course, it is painful, but it's not impossible. We have seen what happened in Spain, we have seen what happened in Portugal, of course in Greece. We know that today it is extremely difficult to explain this to our fellow citizens, but I hope that now with the new Prime Minister, for the next 18 months, we will use this time, and it's possible to demonstrate to the rest of our partners that we will go back on track.
I mean, you've said France is the last student in the European class. So does that mean France doesn't have credibility anymore now to talk in the Euro group and the eco thing?
Well, you know, France is, I mean, we are the second largest economy of the EU. We are the seventh largest economy on this planet. We are the only country, and I think it's important not only to have a seat at the UN, the Security Council, permanent one, but also to be the only country in Europe to be able to handle everything which is necessary for our defense, of course, at our level. But remember that we have nuclear submarines, we are nuclear aircraft carriers. We are the only one being able to carry deterrence with our nuclear weapon, which is extremely important these days. We know that mistrust after the elections of Donald Trump now is a key word everywhere in Europe, and that every country in Europe realizes that we need now to work much more closely, including in defense. And of course, France will have to play a key role because of what we have done. So France is a big country, but you need to keep your commitment, and you're right, for the euro. And it's true that at the Eurogroup, at the ECOFIN, when you don't take your commitment, it makes you a bit more weak to speak to others. That's the reality.
You mentioned President Trump. I wanted to ask about the whole transatlantic relationship now, because of course the US president is now asking for American companies to be exempted from certain European rules on things like duty of care, carbon border taxes, etc. This is not the stability in transatlantic relations that we were promised, the way that President von der Leyen sold to Europeans that accord that was signed in July.
Well, first, there's two things. I think it's extremely important now to go back to stability, and we need stability, of course, in business, and I think it's absolutely paramount. The United States have been our allies for decades, and they will continue to be. It's extremely important that they understand that our project is a project based on democratic values, and what we have done for our regulations with biodiversity and also the way we take care of people is important. It's important also the way we behave now in the digital world.
So no exemptions for Trump.
That has been voted by our democracy. It's not against anybody. It's just for our people. And again, we are an open market. Everyone is welcome to benefit from our market. But we have some rules, and these rules apply for everyone, including ourselves, if you want to benefit from the internal market, being in product or in services.
But there are these differences in the EU, of course, on how to deal with Trump. You've got people saying, yes, maybe the EU can buy natural gas to stave off even higher tariffs. I mean, when you look at all the divisions, the EU doesn't look very strategically autonomous in the face of Trump, does it?
Well, first, again, in order to be able to be stronger, we have decided that, for example, for trade, we gave all of us, the 27 member states, the power to the commissions to deal in our name, because, of course, we are stronger together than one by one. So I think it means that the Commission has to use this power to make sure that in the balance of power, in the discussions the Commission has with other continents, being China, being the United States, a good use of this power is made. And again, what is a good use is the fact that we finally end with a balanced relation. I say a balance. Again, we are not against anybody in Europe. Our project is a peace project, but we cannot be naive anymore.
I want to ask you a little bit about the whole European defence situation. There was this failure by MEPs to agree on EDIP, the European Defence Industry Programme, in the last Strasbourg plenary. What are the main obstacles to a more integrated European defence that you see right now?
Well, I'm the one who put in place this EDIP program with my team, of course, when I was in charge of the defence industry as a commissioner. So I know this program extremely well. Again, it is based on just on defence industry. What is extremely important is that, of course, the defence stays at the level of member states. This is their sovereignty, and it will stay this way, and it's important. And the Commission needs to understand that they cannot go on this ground because the member states will never allow the Commission to do it. On the other hand, the Commission has a very important power in industry, and here, of course, to help. And this is what is EDIP about. So we need more pedagogy. What I believe is that we need, and by the way, I was not the only one, because Mario Draghi or Enrico Letta in their reports, extremely good reports, they mentioned that it was important to have probably a joint capacity to issue debt at the EU level to accelerate and to enhance our industrial base in defense. That's extremely important. This is the way we did, by the way. You remember we had a big discussion for shells and caliber 155 ammunitions that we wanted to deliver to Ukraine. And I have been tasked when I was a commissioner to start. At that time, we were manufacturing 500,000 per year. Today, because we put in place a program, we are more than 2 million per year. So we are in our way to achieve what Russia is doing. We did this in less than 2 years. So it's possible. It demonstrates that it's possible to work together to enhance drastically our defense industry.
Just a quick final point. There's a lot of discussion about the Commission's proposal for a so-called drone wall. Some EU member states seem to not even like the term drone wall. Was this maybe a faux pas, calling it that?
Well, you know, I mean, it reminds us in France of l'Imaginaux, and we should demonstrate that
people can go around the back of the
possible, I mean, especially for drones. I mean, you can do it with a car. We can do it with an individual. So I mean, it doesn't work this way. So I think it has been, by the way, said very vocally by the President Macron, by Chancellor Merkel, or by Prime Minister Meloni, and because I know very well what it is about. But it means that, of course, we need together to work on how to defend our airspace. And that's already put in the strategic boussole,
the compass, strategic compass,
yes. That have been put in place in 2023 by Joseph Borrell and the 27 member states. Now it should be the, let's say, the compass. And as we say in French, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. On va pas inventer la roue. It's done. It's extremely clear how to defend and to have a strategic investment to defend our airspace, but also space alone, and also cyberspace, and also maritime. And these are 4 spaces which are called contested spaces where we need to work together.
We'll leave it there. Thank you so much for being our guest on Talking Europe.
Okay, another issue that we need to start paying attention to is Argentina and the bailout. The United States looks like it's going to be bailing out. And if you take a look at economic history, when there are problems with the currency, especially in Asia and in South America, a crisis metastasizes worldwide. All right. Before we pivot to that video, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get this foundational aspect to the health protocol. Complete multivitamin. These multivitamins have the cofactors for enzymatic activity. So these cofactors will attach to the enzyme in your cell and change its conformation and be more efficient. So your cellular metabolism, your cellular functions will perform better, quicker. Take this multivitamin, it's easy to digest, and again, it has the cofactors for enzymatic activity. Now, I have 2 types of probiotics, a powdered version and a veggie cap version. Take them, either one of them, take it every day, and this will help with your gut biome, improve your metabolism, improve your absorption of your food, help with the communication between your gut and your liver and your gut and your brain, improve your immune system, increase the mucosal lining, and improve your concentrations of IgA. In addition, you'll be able to sleep better, and you'll be well rested. You'll be able to consolidate memory better. You're going to get rid of that brain fog. You're going to be more well rested, and over time, even your skin will improve. So please go to my store, get the probiotics, and take it with the complete multivitamin. That's the foundation for the health protocol. And then you build on top of that. I call it the 4 pillars. The first pillar is the Max 35 or cleanse. That helps to boost up that immune system. The second pillar, C60, to soak up free radicals. The third pillar, turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans to help with your immune system and your cardiovascular system. And Boomer Boost to boost up your energy levels and your metabolism. When you do that on a regular basis, you're going to slow down the aging process and boost up your immune system, improve your endocrine system and your other bodily systems, including your brain function. All right, let's go to Argentina here.
Until really quite recently, it looked like Argentina's president, Javier Milei, had achieved the impossible. He'd somehow fixed both Argentina's trade and budget deficits. He had some of the highest approval ratings in the world, and he quickly became an inspiration to right-wingers everywhere. Unfortunately for Milei, a slump in the polls, a bad result in the Buenos Aires local elections, and a weaker-than-expected economic recovery sparked a sell-off in the peso, which started in July but has since continued, despite a generous $20 billion bailout by the Trump administration. So in this video, we're going to take a look at what's gone wrong for Milei, why Trump's bailout hasn't worked, and whether there's a way out. You rank every single politician in the world. Hear our thoughts and argue with us on our podcast, The World Leader Leaderboard. Find it on the TLDR Podcast YouTube channel or in your favorite podcast app. So let's start with a quick recap. Most of Milei's recent woes have revolved around Argentina's currency, the peso. Before Milei, the peso essentially had 2 exchange rates, the official rate claimed and managed by the government, and the unofficial or actual rate, known as the blue rate. When Milei took charge in late 2023, the official rate was about 370th the dollar, while the unofficial rate was about 1,000th the dollar. The simplest thing Milei could have done would have been to just simply devalue the official rate to the unofficial rate, thus unifying the currency and allowing the peso to float. However, while he did immediately devalue the peso to about 800th the dollar, he didn't go all of the way because he was worried that such a steep devaluation would cause destabilizing levels of inflation. Milei then opted for a crawling peg, which involved devaluing the peso's so-called official rate by 2% each month, with the idea that the official rate would eventually catch up with the unofficial or market rate. While this policy succeeded in tamping down inflation, the 2 rates never converged because the peso's unofficial rate kept declining even faster than the crawling peg. So in April of this year, Milei took the leap, scrapped most capital controls, and let the peso float, essentially unifying the 2 rates. Originally, it looked like it was a success. The peso stabilized at just below 1,200 per dollar. This was both below Milei's stated lower bound of 1,400 and even below the 1,250 or so that the unofficial peso was trading at before unification. However, in recent months, the peso has started falling again. This decline began in July, but accelerated dramatically in August, when Milei's approval rating slumped and his party underperformed at the Buenos Aires provincial election, sparking anxieties among investors that Milei's reforms wouldn't actually stick. Milei worried that such a steep decline would stoke inflation, but didn't want to intervene directly in currency markets, both because it would require him to burn through his limited foreign exchange reserves, and because he'd sort of promised the IMF that he wouldn't. Instead, Milei originally tried some more fiddly policies, like reinstating certain foreign exchange controls and raising reserve requirements for banks. In other words, demanding that banks buy more pesos to artificially create demand for pesos. However, when the sell-off accelerated after the Buenos Aires elections on September 7th, it quickly became apparent that fiddly policies weren't going to be sufficient, and Milei had to intervene directly, buying up pesos with dollars on currency markets. This obviously wasn't sustainable, given Argentina's limited reserves, and it soon became clear that Milei was going to need some sort of bailout to avoid a sudden and severe devaluation. Fortunately for Milei, on September 22nd, with the peso trading at nearly 1,500 per dollar, US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent took to X to announce that the US would, quote, do what is needed. While it wasn't immediately clear what form this bailout.
Businesses everywhere are turning to Gusto for payroll, benefits, and more. Save time. Save money. It's no wonder Gusto was named tech.
While it wasn't immediately clear what form this bailout would take, the mere prospect of American support was enough to turn the tide, and the peso promptly started strengthening against the dollar. 2 days later, on September 24th, Bessent announced that the bailout would center around what's known as a swap line. Swap lines are basically arrangements that allow financial institutions to swap their currencies with one another at whatever the exchange rate is at the time. They're usually done between central banks, but in this case, it's actually the US Treasury that's offering the swap line. In practice, this means that Argentina can swap its pesos for US dollars, up to $20 billion of them, at the current market rates. And importantly, when the time comes to swap the currencies back, Argentina can swap them back at the same original exchange rate. This makes things a lot safer for Argentina than if it were just to borrow dollars normally, because if the peso devalued in the meantime, repaying such dollar-denominated debt would become way more expensive. Swap lines like this are supposed to convince markets that the current exchange rate is stable and provide Argentina with more dollars to defend the currency if it needs to. Originally, this looked like it had worked, and the peso strengthened from nearly 1,500 per dollar on September 21st to just over 1,300 per dollar on September 26th. But since then, things have once again gone downhill. In the week since, the peso has weakened, rising to above 1,400 per dollar at the start of October. Milei has stabilized things by burning through Argentina's dollar reserves and hiking interest rates in an attempt to make saving in pesos more attractive. But both of these strategies have serious drawbacks. Super steep rate hikes have slowed down the economy, which is already shrinking in the second quarter, and traders currently estimate that the Argentinian treasury only has about $700 million left in reserves, about enough to last a week. So why has the peso resumed its decline? Well, it's in large part because markets are no longer sure that Milei's reforms will stick. The economy is struggling, he and his party are sliding in the polls, and it looks increasingly possible that his reforms will be stymied by the opposition, especially if they can replicate their recent success in Buenos Aires in the midterms, which are due for October 26th. Markets would also have preferred a swap line with the Federal Reserve rather than the US Treasury. After all, the Fed can create unlimited dollars, while the Treasury cannot. But it's perhaps fundamentally because, well, the peso is just overvalued relative to the actual strength of the Argentinian economy. Growth has stalled, and Argentinian exports have been so weak that Argentina's trade account has flipped back into deficit, meaning less demand for pesos. Furthermore, on an inflation-adjusted basis, the peso is still pretty strong by historical standards, and stronger than peer currencies. As always, the big risk for Milei here is that he gets stuck in a doom loop. There's always been the risk of an electoral doom loop, whereby falling poll numbers trigger sell-offs in the markets, stunting any prospective economic recovery, and thus pushing his poll numbers down further, etc., etc. But there's now the risk of a peso-related doom loop too, whereby Milei's interventions in the currency market undermine trust in the peso, causing more people to sell pesos, requiring more interventions, etc., ultimately ending in an inevitable and severe devaluation. You know as well as us that in the current climate, it's important to stay sharp, and perhaps even more important to be precise. Well, our sponsor this week, Henson Shaving, knows this better than anyone, and they take pride in their precision. That's because their razor perfectly holds the blade.
Now we're gonna go to JP Morgan CEO talking about AI, jobs, and government shutdown. But the worry that I have is that the peso devaluation in Argentina could lead to potentially other countries in South America, maybe even in the Pacific Rim, that will start to have currency problems. And this could metastasize across the world. Now, put it in the context, it's not just financial. It's obviously Milei will have problems for his government. We're seeing problems with the government of France. We're seeing the problems with the government in the UK. We're seeing issues that are starting to transpire with, will the peace hold in the Middle East? We don't know. What's happening with NATO and the war in Ukraine? What will China do with Taiwan? See, the point I'm making is all these seemingly disparate items could actually amplify each other and cause a problem in the world. Now, I made a statement last video and the video before that, where I said that this seems to be a false peace in the Middle East, and that this is going to probably curse the world, and that curse will come down on the world on September 11th of 2026. Why? Because that's when the shofar is not blown on the Sabbath for Rosh Hashanah. And the reason why the curse is coming is because there was a piece that was pushed that didn't solve the problem, and that is what's going on with the Temple Mount. So, October 7th of 2023 was a curse on Israel, and eventually it ended up being a curse on the Gazans. I think that there's going to be a major curse around the world, and it's going to be economic, political, and involve kinetic situation around the world. Now, I could be wrong, but I don't think so. I don't think so. So it's important to kind of just survey that whole landscape and see that these events are going to emerge. Okay. Before we go to the CEO of JP Morgan here on AI, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the vitamin C and magnesium. Vitamin C and magnesium, it's dual purpose supplement. It'll help with your skin, boost up your immune system, and magnesium helps with brain function. Super important, especially if you're 40 years of age or older. Magnesium and zinc boosts up that immune system and helps with brain function. And magnesium also increases the efficacy of vitamin D3. You should be taking this stack every day, but especially during the fall and the winter, boost up that immune system and help with your brain function. Also, ubiquinol. Ubiquinol is the most bioavailable form of CoQ10 that you can get. Ubiquinol is an antioxidant. It's going to soak up free radicals. It's going to help with the health of the mitochondria. It's going to boost up your energy levels and protect your neurons. Take ubiquinol every day, especially if you're 40 years of age or older. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video and all my videos. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order.
Jamie, we're talking about the fact that you have lent into technology over the last decade, billions of dollars invested across the business. When it comes to AI, which parts of the JP Morgan business are going to be most transformed by AI?
Yeah, so we've been doing AI since 2012. So people think it's a new thing. Gen AI is kind of new, but not all AI. We have 2,000 people doing it. Spend $2 billion a year on it. It affects everything: risk, fraud, marketing, idea generation, customer service, and it's kind of the tip of the iceberg. And so, we're deploying it. Every time we meet as a business, we ask, what are you doing now? What are you doing to serve your people? Why can you do better? What is somebody else doing? So we're freely deploying it and safely. We have a lot of rules and regulations in place for our own data and how we use it, et cetera.
Is it having a material impact on revenues for JP Morgan? If not now, then when?
So we have shown that for $2 billion of expense, we have about $2 billion of benefit. Some we actually can do real detail. We did this, we reduced headcount, we saved this time and money, we reduced errors. Some you can't. It just improves service, something like that. It's like almost worthwhile, worthless to say what's the NPV, but we know about $2 billion of actual cost saves. And I think it's the tip of the iceberg. We're getting better and better at it. We know how to do it. As the managers learn how to do it, they're asking more questions. Why can't it do X and why can't it do Y? And then out of my phone here, we have a suite, an LLM suite on internal data. We do research and summarize reports and scan contracts and do things like that. 150,000 people a week use it. So it's quite productive.
More and more of your employees are using the agentic AI.
Our own LLM, and agentic is just starting, you know, but that will be deployed over time too. But it's also being used for coding. I mean, it's being used quite broadly now, and like I said, part of it is getting your mind working around how you're going to use this thing. And so our managers and leaders have to do it.
If you look out 5 years, are there more jobs in banking as a result of AI or fewer?
I think people shouldn't put their head in the sand. It is going to affect jobs. So think of every application, every service you do, when you'll be using AI, some to enhance it, some of it'll be you doing the same job, you're doing a better job at it. There will be jobs that it eliminates. But you're better off being way ahead of the curve and retraining people. So we retrain and redeploy a lot of people. So for JP Morgan, if we're successful, we'll have more jobs. But there'll probably be less jobs in certain functions.
When you look at the spend on,
It's happening right now. It's happening to banking, blockchain, crypto. If change is happening in finance, then it's happening everywhere. And it's happening with Ripple.
when you look at the spend on AI, infrastructure, chips, OpenAI, not making a profit, loss making, deals of about $1 trillion this year, the hyperscalers, the spend there. What is your reaction when you see those numbers crossing? Are you comfortable with that kind of spend on the infrastructure around AI?
It's a lot. I'm not sure it's all ever going to be totally spent. I think when you look at big tech, like tech that happens like this, and you go look at cars, you look at television, you look at internet, big money's got spent. There are a lot of losers, a lot of winners. In total, it's productive. So even take the internet bubble, and that blew up, and amount of people, you and I can probably name 100 companies that were worth $50 billion and disappeared, but out of it came Facebook, YouTube, Google. So there will be some real big companies, real big success. It will work, despite the fact that not everyone who invested in it is going to have a great investment return.
And of course, those investments are part of what has powered this bull market in stocks. And on Sunday, it'll be 3 years of that bull market. Where do you think we are in that bull market? Is there any complacency there? Is it underpinned by rational factors? Is there more momentum?
Yeah, look, we're in a bull market. It's been clear. Asset prices are high, credit spreads are low, consumer's still okay. The consumer has jobs. Remember, jobs usually starts to force people to cut back and change things. Consumers spend less and companies cut back. So far, so good. There are a lot of issues out there that the economy's got to deal with, from all the geopolitical stuff. Maybe they'll start well. What's going to happen to inflation? I'm a little more nervous about inflation not coming down like people expect. That might be a surprise. On the other hand, there's a lot of spending. There's a lot of government spending, which is inflationary too, by the way. And so I don't know. I hope for the best, plan for the worst.
And you're not worried about a recession in 2026 for the US. You made that clear.
I think it could happen in 2026. I'm not worried about it as a different statement. We'll deal with it. We'll serve our clients. We'll navigate through it. A lot of it has been through it before. You don't wish it because certain people get hurt, but it could happen in 2026.
We're still, of course, in the US government shutdown.
But I do think there are positives, like deregulation is real positive. But it also helps animal spirits with positive. And in the one big beautiful bill, there's also more stimulus that has positives for the economy, but maybe negatives for inflation. So how it all sorts out, we'll see.
Markets are looking through the US government shutdown. Is there a period of time, if this shutdown continues, where markets start to wake up and become concerned?
I don't think so. I don't like shutdowns. I think it's just a bad idea. And I don't care what the Democrats and Republicans say. It's a bad idea. It's not a way to run a railroad. I don't think it's critical. I've got the number 4 or 5 or 6. One of them went for 35 days. I'm not sure anyone really affected the economy or market in no way.
You mentioned inflation. You said you're a little bit more concerned about inflation than maybe some others. Markets pricing in about 100 basis points of cuts between now and this time next year from the Fed. Does that therefore seem reasonable to you, or markets are over their skis in pricing?
I think markets have to make a forecast. I want to point out that forecasts have almost always been wrong, and the Fed's been wrong too. So it isn't like their forecast is going to be accurate. If inflation goes up, starts ticking up for whatever reason, and it might, it's going to be hard to do 100 points. They might do some, and Then they have the battle, you know, the give and take of, if unemployment starts going up, well, obviously they're gonna do something. So we'll see.
You've long talked about geopolitics as being a risk factor. We're seeing gold at $4,000. We're seeing Bitcoin at record highs. The dollar, though, year to date, down about 8% on the Bloomberg Dollar Index. Are you seeing structural shifts out of the US dollar? And is that a sustained theme?
A little bit, but again, I wouldn't have heartburn over it. The dollar did well for a long time. If you own US stocks, or foreigners own something like $35 trillion of US stocks and bonds, and because the stock market's gone up, your allocation to the US has gone up. I think it's perfectly reasonable for investment committees in Europe and around the world to cut back a little bit of their equity ownership. We've also seen people changing their hedge ratios and stuff like that. So it may just be a rational adjustment to, you know, I don't expect a stronger dollar. The tariffs have this effect. But it's still, if you look at America, still the greatest place in the world to invest in the long term.
And deal making seems to be picking up. And of course, JP Morgan played a significant role in the takeover, the take private of EA, $20 billion in financing provided by JP Morgan. Is that a marker in the sand? Is that a one-off as a deal of that type? Or is it a sign of more competition between, frankly, the banks and private credit?
Well, we're agnostic about private credit. So there may be competition or not. We want our customers to do it in their interest. We offer both, you know, and we did that whole deal in 11 days. And we didn't do it that way to make a point to private credit. You know, if they said do it differently, we could have done it differently too. And so, but there's a lot of merger talk. There's a lot of firepower. There's a lot of tech. We have a bunch of IPOs in the US. I know there's only been a handful here. The tech world is still doing quite well. You know, 800 companies here. I think it was 400 last year. You know, we have 500 bankers coming the innovation economy globally around the world, including they added like 50 alone here. So, yeah, look, I'm a long-term optimist. I do think asset prices are high, credit spreads are low, and you know, you should take that into consideration as you think about the future.
When we talk about credit and we talk about debt, I'm thinking of some data, in fact, that JP Morgan put out on auto loans. Biggest losses in the most recent month, I think since 2020, March of 2020. Is that idiosyncratic to auto loans in the US, or are you seeing other weak links being stressed?
I think, you know, there were one or two frauds, which I won't go through, but in general, consumer credit was so good. It's basically most of that just normalizing for both credit card, but subprime order is a little bit worse than normalizing. It doesn't look like it's getting worse from here, but it might. But a lot of that, if you look at the history of credit for consumers, it's employment. It's when employment or home prices go way down, which, you know, we may not expect, that drives, you know, credit.
The administration is talking about possibly changing the requirement around quarterly earnings. And you've talked about this.
My daughter is being treated for leukemia. It hit me hard. It did. Being a girl dad, it really
earnings. And you've talked about this, you've written about this with Warren Buffett around the guidance part of earnings, the quarterly guidance. Would you welcome a change like that? And would it mean a change in JP Morgan in terms of how often you
update? I would welcome it. We still probably update investors quarterly with much less stuff, and we do it very transparent. I think the bigger problem wasn't just reporting quarterly, it was forecasting where, you know, CEOs get their back up against the wall, they have to meet these things, earnings, and they start doing dumb stuff to meet earnings, and that kind of public pressure. I think it's a smaller part of a much bigger problem. We've gone from 8,000 public companies in 1996 to like 4,000 today. And, you know, that, I'm not sure that's good. We drive companies out of it. We have cookie cutter governance. Some activists are good, but they're activists. There's litigation. There's cookie cutter compensation. There's very expensive listing. There's, you know, disclosure rules, which you've heard about them here. I mean, endless rules, and that it makes it hard for a small company to go public. So I think, and they're trying to do that here, have an active small company going public. That's what we all need. And they create an equity culture, which Rachel Reeves was trying to do here. And I think they're doing a good job reducing regulations, you know, trying to make it easier to do business, and, you know, reducing regulating banks, but also in business in general. You want an active market, and we kind of crushed it. And because the research laws and MiFID and disclosure requirements. So if I was a regulator, I would take a step back and look at the whole system and say, how can we improve it and make it safer? You know, and look at it holistically as opposed to, you know, just everything's like a one-off conversation.
I need to talk to you about some other changes that the Trump administration is taking. You are a champion of capitalism and free market capitalism. Yeah. So when you see stakes taken by the administration, or the US government, let's put it that way, in terms of Intel, golden share for US Steel, investments in a lithium mine producer, how does that sit with you?
Yeah. So the first thing is, there are legitimate complaints around trading. So just take that first. Some around just unfair trading. It's unfair to use, it's not just tariffs, it's surpluses, it's capital, it's quotas, it's just, it's the non-tariff barriers. And then there's national security related. So I think of national security, you have to take some special tackle industrial policy, but it's got to be done right. It's got to come with permitting, no social, no virtual signaling. And so like the deal that was done for MP, I thought they did a very smart thing. They're giving MP, which we were part of banking, does rare earth magnets, because they have a long-term contract with the government, it gives them a chance to survive, to get through, they call it Valley of Death. And they bought a piece of country. So I thought that was really well done. I'm not going to comment all of them. I think you have to be very careful when you get involved in that kind of stuff. Why are you doing it? What's the long-term benefit? And then of course, if Democrats get in power, they're going to do even more of it. So I would be very cautious about how you go about that. I do think they need to do more.
AI requires.
You cannot do a certain
low
thing in the
latency
United States.
timers.
If you think a company's gonna do it, they'll be bankrupt in 7 months. They either need free land, cheaper financing, and maybe the most important is long-term purchase agreements with, defense or companies or something that give them a real chance to build a business.
You touched on the fact that we're here in the UK, the Chancellor here, she addressed the summit, she addressed the conference, she's making those changes. Is the UK doing enough? There are going to be potentially some changes when it comes to listings. They may be announced in the budget in November. Is enough being done to make the UK, to make London an attractive listing destination?
Yeah. Well, first of all, something here, it's a wonderful city. It's a melting pot. The brain power is extraordinary. I'm talking about not just financial, but lawyers and technology, media. It's unbelievable. It's a huge benefit to UK, though I'm not sure the rest of the UK appreciates that much. And they're saying the right things. They're deregulating. It's not just banks, but business in general, reducing red tape. I call it blue tape now. They're reducing red tape, blue tape. They're trying to consolidate the pension and savings schemes, which I think is very smart. Have a little more of an equity risk culture. Not to lose money, but to take a little more risk. Maybe some of the tech companies here. Yeah, I applaud everything they're doing. I know the public here doesn't applaud as much as I do, but they have to keep going.
H1B visas in the US, talking about attracting talent. $100,000. Is that a barrier to the US tech sector? Are you concerned about it?
No, I'm not. Again, I get Harper of it. It's 600,000 employees. That's it. We have 160 million people working. And I do think, these things happen. I didn't like it when I first saw it. I still don't particularly like it, but you know what? It was being abused. I mean, we did the analysis and the work. It was not supposed to be to bring cheaper workers here to make more money for your company. It was meant to bring very talented people that you don't necessarily have for your company. And we may have made some mistakes, but let's just fix the system. I was with the president once and he said more merit-based, more merit-based. In fact, I heard him say we should stamp a green card every person in this country who went to university or advanced degrees and have them stay here and build their career here. That would be my belief. I wanted to go back to that.
Yeah.
Not make it harder to be, make it easier for real merit-based.
So you speak to the president every week?
No.
All right, we're going to pivot over to the potentiality of the peace being a false peace in the Middle East. Before we do that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the vitamin B complex. Vitamin B complex will help boost up your energy levels, help with the health of your mitochondria, increase your cellular metabolism, and protect your neurons. Clarity Factor is a great neural stack to get rid of brain fog. It's going to help you concentrate. Clarity Factor will also help support your memory. And over time, your dendritic connections will improve. You're going to be able to think faster and have better memory recall. Take Clarity Factor every day, drink it with filtered water. And omega-3 is a great way to improve your cardiovascular health. Omega-3 will help to bring down LDL levels and increase your HDL levels, bring down inflammation, and have your red blood cells reduce its stickiness to each other. So this will help to reduce clot formation. So please take omega-3 every day, really important to improve your cardiovascular health. And this is a great stack. You're improving your cardiovascular health by taking the omega-3. Clarity Factor to help with your neurostack. And vitamin B complex is helping with your neurons and your cellular metabolism. This is a very powerful stack. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the omega-3 clarity factor and vitamin B complex.
$75% of the Israelis think that he should resign immediately.
Let's get a perspective on this from a distinguished figure in Israeli public life. Ami Ayalon is a former head of the Shin Bet, that's Israel's security service, also a former commander of the Israeli Navy. He was a politician who served in Knesset for the Labour Party and Israel's cabinet under Prime Minister Ehud Olmert. He's also worked with Palestinian leaders to find solutions to the decades, centuries-long conflict, really. Ami, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for speaking to us this morning. I wonder then what you identify as the biggest potential difficulties in this plan from here. For example, it requires that Hamas would give up any role in the running of Gaza and put its weapons beyond use. Do you think that that is the biggest hurdle to a long and sustained peace?
I think that the major obstacle, the way I see the process now, is to bridge or to create a bridge between the first stage, which is releasing hostages and ending the violence, and the goal. I heard President Trump saying that he expects not only to end the violence, but to create peace after 3,000 years of violence. So first of all, I have to update him that if he really wants to go back to the narrative, to the history, the hatred between the sons of Abraham, Ishmael, and Isaac started 4,000 years ago. So if really he wants or he thinks that he should or we have to go to peace, yes, we didn't create the bridge between the first stage, which I'm very optimistic, because as it was mentioned before, everybody wants it, all the Israelis, all the Palestinians. But what is missing in order to the bridge should be built on the Palestinians. And what drives me crazy is that in all the interviews, I hear about negotiations between Hamas and Israel, and mediating or leading by the American president. Yeah, he is a leader, and if you ask me, all the Israelis think that he should get the Nobel Prize. But this is not peace. Again, as long Palestinians are not represented by Hamas, Palestinians hate Hamas. They see, they blame Hamas for the disasters that they are, facing today in Gaza. We are responsible, but they blame Hamas. Yeah. And Netanyahu do not represent the Israelis. He's, 75% of the Israelis saying that he should resign immediately. So unless we shall find a way with the assistance of the international community, first of all, to deal with the Palestinians and not with Hamas, and unless we shall understand that we have to start by defining the goal. The goal is a reality of two states. It will be a very long, very difficult process.
Yeah. Are we on that path now? I noted that you've argued in the past that only a path to a Palestinian state, as you just outlined again here, as a two-state solution can stop the kind of ongoing calamity. Are we on that path now?
Well, according to the polls, this is exactly the challenge. Because when you find two sides that they hate, both of them are confused, are humiliated, and hate each other. So this is the leadership challenge that the international community and President Trump are facing. Because Israelis and Palestinians, when they think about the future, they do want a reality of two states, but they do not believe that it is achievable. So only with the international and President Trump leadership, it's a leadership challenge, and as far the problem today is nobody is speaking about it because people believe it's that only constructive ambiguity can bring us there. But constructive ambiguity brought us to Oslo, and Oslo collapsed.
exactly when we started to speak about the main or the core issues.
Yeah.
So yes, I think that we have to start by defining the goal. By the way, all the Arab states are saying it. There is something very, very interesting when you try to understand the American policy. American policy, they used to tell us during the last 30, 40 years, we cannot want peace more than you want. Now, it's the first time an American president, in a way, is telling us, no, I want it more than you do. And in a way, this is the only way to explain what he's doing and why he's so successful in the eyes of the Israelis and in the eyes of the Palestinians.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like he's the most popular politician in the region at the moment, doesn't it, President Trump?
He is, by the way.
Yeah. You said before, Ami, that if you were a Palestinian, you would fight those who occupied your land. Hamas are now being told that they must stop. They seem to be acquiescing to that, at least to an extent. What about those who would say that not enough has changed for them to stop fighting, that their fight goes on?
Look, they will stop fighting only, and this is a bridge. In order to understand the bridge between the short run and the long run, we shall not be able to dismantle Hamas unless Palestinians will believe that it will bring them end of occupation. So, we shall find it very soon. In 2-3 weeks, we shall have to deal with, dismantling Hamas. And all the Egyptians and Jordanians and Palestinians are saying, and Hamas is saying, we shall not give up on our weapons unless we shall know that it will bring us the reality of two states. So the short run and the long run will meet very shortly.
That's a fascinating part of this 20-point plan and how things move from here and bridge between the short term and the long term. Can Hamas have a legitimate and credible and, I suppose, a role in the running of a functioning Palestinian state?
No, this is exactly... No, this is exactly the problem that Hamas is facing. And Hamas understand it. You have to understand Hamas. Hamas is an ideology with a military wing, which we call it Azadin al-Qassam. But the ideology comes first. If you will ask, the leaders of Hamas, not the military leaders, the religious leaders and the political leaders, they will be ready to give up on their weapons, but they will not give up on the ideology.
Should Marwan Barghouti, who is this kind of, quite senior figure, should he be released despite the fact he is currently serving jail time on several murder offences, murder charges, and indeed plotting attacks against Israel? Is he key to unlocking this bridge?
Are you asking about Marwan Barghouti?
I am, yes.
Yeah, first of all, Marwan Barghouti is totally against Hamas. Marwan Barghouti support and dream about the reality of two states. And I don't see it happening because the opposition of our government is against it. But the only way to lead Palestinians is to say we will be ready to negotiate with every Palestinian leader who believes in the reality of two states and to forget, if he will say, to forget what he did before. Because, when you measure people according to what they did in the past, all of us, Israeli generals, and all of them, they felt that they are fighting for their liberty to the end, of occupation. So Marwan Barghouti is the leader who would be elected among the Palestinians because he believed in two states and because he's sitting in our jail.
Israel says he's a terrorist leader. He's serving multiple life sentences after being convicted.
I have to tell you something about terrorism.
Yeah.
Yitzhak Shamir and Begin, who signed the peace with Egypt, he was perceived as a terrorist in England during the British mandate because he did not believe in peace. He believed that the British will leave only as a result of violence. And violence is permitted only to nations, to states. And if you're only organizations, this is terror.
Will the process?
This is exactly what we see today.
Yeah. Will the process fail without Barghousie's release and involvement?
Sorry?
Will the process fail without the release of Barghousie and without his involvement in the process?
I'm not sure because today there are many young Palestinian leaders who can replace him. And again, the idea is he became a symbol. But they want so much to see the end of occupation, and they believe that if they will have the right, we had to listen to Sheikh Yassin, who was the founder and the political leader of Hamas. And he said in 1997, when he was asked about the obstacle to Hamas to create a reality of one state from the Jordan to the sea, he said the major obstacle for us, Hamas, is if Palestinian people will believe that Israelis will let them the opportunity to create a Palestinian state alongside Israel. Because if this will be the reality, Palestinians will not support Hamas.
Yeah.
And they will elect a leader that believes in diplomacy in order to create a reality of two states.
Yeah. Ami, it's fascinating speaking to you. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ami Aolon there, who was the head.
I don't believe that the peace in the Middle East is going to last and it's going to rear its head up again, and that there's going to be a serious curse that's coming down on the world. And it's not first of all, the two-state solution is never going to happen. Second of all, they haven't gotten to the root core of the problem. What's going on with Temple Mount? That is the biggest issue. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the heirloom barley. Heirloom barley will help to detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals through superoxide dismutase. By detoxifying your body and bringing down inflammation regularly, what's going to happen is your immune system, your endocrine system, even your brain function is going to improve. By bringing down inflammation at the cardiovascular level, you're reducing plaque formation. Get this heirloom barley, take it every day. This is a month's supply, and improve your health and slow down the aging process. It's also important to take zeolite. Zeolite will bind to heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals. Take 3 small drops underneath your tongue, drink it with filtered water. Do it every day, and guess what? You'll be able to urinate those toxins out within 6 to 8 hours. You're improving your immune system, your endocrine system, your brain function, and your other bodily systems. Super important to do every day. Drink it with filtered water. Make sure you stay away from processed foods, and clean your environment around your home. Please go to my store and get the nattokinase. Nattokinase will break up clots and help to bring down LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. And by doing that, you're reducing plaque formation. You're helping your cardiovascular health. Vitamin D3 is a cofactor for gene expression. And vitamin D3 helps to get rid of cells that are infected. It helps to get the cell to go into apoptosis. It's important to take this during the fall and the winter season. Vitamin D3 also can help improve your cardiovascular health and your bone density. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the vitamin D3. And I have deodorants that are dual purpose. I've partnered up with Rainbow Herbals, and we've developed these deodorant bars. You can get it in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree, and in citrus. These are for males and females. They're made from essential oils from the Himalayas. Dual purpose. Use it as a daily deodorant, but it'll also help to detoxify your body. So get these very high quality deodorant bars. Use them every day. Help support the work that I do, and help support your health and wellness. Another really important thing to take for the fall and the winter are the drops and the lozenges. You can get it in cherry, honey and lemon, and also in blueberry. Get a few bags for your household. Very high quality drops. And I also have in stock lozenges the elderberry zinc. Get a few bags for your household. Make sure you have some at work and at home, especially for this fall and winter season. The moment you have that throat irritation, take these right away to mitigate the problem. Very important. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. It's all caps, discount 5. All right, now what we're gonna do is listen to Victor Davis Hansen. And he's talking about how the Democrats are the new Confederates.
There's been a lot of news lately about the efforts of the Border Patrol and the Immigration Customs Enforcement, ICE. And I want to remind everybody how that works out in reality. In many cities, there is organized resistance. But what's really disturbing is we're starting to see a new, I would call it a neo-Confederate secessionist ideology in these cities. The officials who run them, the mayors or the police chiefs, believe there are a law unto themselves. Sometimes it's very violent by Antifa, are encouraged by the Democratic Party in California, Governor Gavin Newsom or Governor Pritzker of Chicago. They can nullify all federal laws. And when we get to that point, we're really on the verge of civil insurrection, just in the way that South Carolina on the eve of the Civil War. Hello, this is Victor Davis Hansen for the
Gusto is the best choice for small business payroll. It's fast. It's trusted. It's a great value. And when it comes to running your business, it's the easiest choice you can make. Get started for free at gusto.com.
Very exciting. Hello, this is Victor Davis Hansen for the Daily Signal. There's been a lot of news lately about the efforts of the Border Patrol and the Immigration Customs Enforcement, ICE, their efforts to round up illegal aliens, and they are prioritizing two groups, those who have criminal records and those who have already been processed for deportation and have evaded apprehension. But in many cities, in blue states, or at least in blue cities, there is organized resistance. Sometimes it's very violent by Antifa. Sometimes it's sponsored or encouraged by the Democratic Party. Gavin Newsom in California, our governor, or Karen Bass, the mayor of Los Angeles, openly calling for resistance, or Governor Pritzker of Chicago. But what's really disturbing is we're starting to see a new, I would call it a neo-Confederate secessionist ideology in these cities. In these blue cities, the officials who run them, the mayors or the police chiefs, believe there are a law unto themselves. In other words, within the confines of Chicago or within the confines of Portland, they can nullify all federal laws, just in the way that South Carolina said it could on the eve of the Civil War. The Union does not apply to us. We are morally superior. I want to remind everybody how that works out in reality. If you're an ICE agent and you're in an ICE detention center, you may not be able to get out, in or out of work, or you can't fulfill your duties because there is a siege on of Antifa semi-terrorists and their sympathizers that surround you, and the Oregon police will not help you. In fact, in a recent demonstration, a reporter was arrested reporting on the inaction of the Oregon police and the violence of the protesters. If you look at a recent suburb in Chicago, resistors to ICE actually did a blockade. They had 10 or so cars, and they, by design, ambushed a ICE patrol and stopped the agents from being able to go forward or backward in their vehicles. One of them was armed with an automatic weapon. When ICE called for the Chicago police to lend assistance because they were an extremist, the Chicago police did not, Governor Pritzker could basically said that ICE lies, and so we don't really pay any attention to them. Mayor Johnson of Chicago didn't help. In other words, we're starting to see now organized resistance, not on the street by thugs and terrorists and resistors, but we're starting to see in neo-Confederate fashion elected officials. And the premise that they're using is, again, we are a law unto ourselves. I would like to remind them of two things. Not all Americans are Portlanders or Chicagoans, but everybody that's a citizen in Chicago and everybody who is a citizen in Portland is first and foremost a U.S. citizen, and therefore subject to the laws, the federal laws of the government first and foremost. And what these elected officials are doing and what law enforcement is doing at the municipal level is no different than what caused the Civil War. They are actively encouraging resistance and nearly armed resistance, because these officers are law enforcement to federal agents who are trying to dutifully fulfill their constitutional mandates to protect the border and ensure that people who come across do so legally. They're just fulfilling the law, federal immigration law. And yet they're being resisted by, I guess you would call it, neo-Confederates. Where is this going to lead?
We call ourselves Brooklyn Solar Works, but that name means more than just having an office in Brooklyn. It's about learning how to tackle the challenges of this.
Where is this going to lead? If it's not stopped now by mayors and governors in these blue jurisdictions, what's on the horizon is not just blockading ICE cars and not just not rendering assistance. As it gets more and more extreme, you will start to see blue mayors and city officials actually use their powers within their jurisdictions to physically stop ICE. And when we get to that point, we're really on the verge of civil insurrection, and we're back to something like 1861. Or maybe I'd like to end with an example for our blue city mayors, especially in Portland and Chicago. In 1963, George Wallace said, Alabama is a world to itself. It has unique customs and traditions and history that the federal government does not understand. So the federal government cannot come into our state and tell us that we have to give civil rights protections to African Americans who want to attend the University of Alabama. So I, Governor Wallace, will stand in the door and force people who are Black out. And what happened? The Kennedy administration said, no, this isn't 1861, Governor Wallace, I'm sorry. You do not have the right, moral or actual, to refuse a federal mandate. And all men are created equal, and we're going to enforce that. And so what John F. Kennedy did, and Bobby Kennedy as Attorney General, they federalized the Alabama National Guard, and they brought in U.S. troops, and they forced George Wallace to step aside and to accept people according to the laws of the United States of America. So I'd like to remind the left, you're on the side of George Wallace resisting federal law, and ICE that you despise is on the right side of history, trying to enforce laws that have been broken for the protection of all citizens.
I find that the construction of that argument so impressive, because what he just basically said is that the Democratic Party and these crazy mayors in these blue cities, blue states, are racist.
In this United States, including those in Chicago and including those in Portland who are having their civil rights endangered if they live next to an ICE facility or if they're an ICE agent in general. They are endangered, and the federal government has a right to protect them. And so I would urge you all to stop what you're doing and get back to the right side of history. Thank you very much, Victor Davis Hanson.
I totally agree with him on this, but I would be a little bit more succinct. All right. I know he has a podcast and, you know, he's trying to fill up some time. Usually he does these short 8-minute. I don't do 8-minute videos. I do like hour videos. Hours, plural. But the succinct way to say this in terms of like Portland and Chicago, right, is if you have a city that has crime that is not being controlled by the mayors, then it is the right and the obligation of the federal government to come in to clean up the mess. They had ample opportunity. The federal government doesn't want to come in and because of politics and because of cost. They don't want to deal with the headaches of coming in and cleaning up the mess. So why doesn't the mayors do it themselves? Because what it is that they want their society to be like that. There is a Marxist takeover that's taking place here. And so if we want our country to be vibrant, if we want our country to have another 250 years, it's going to have to be under the premise of God, country, and family. There has to be more conservatism that takes place in this country. If it's going to move more and more towards the left, more and more liberal, more and more collectivism, then we are going to lose the prowess of this country. So it's about individualism and not collectivism. It's about conservatism, not liberalism. Because we've seen what happens in these cities when you have a collectivist agenda. We see what has happened in these cities when you have liberals running the show. And if they want to fight against the federal government, they're probably not going to do too well. So Trump going into these cities is exactly what we need, because the mayors didn't want to do it themselves. They didn't want to clean up the mess. And these cities are terrible, terrible, but they're run by Democrats. And they want to have control of Congress and of the judicial branch and of the executive branch. Can you imagine if they can't keep a city like Chicago clean and safe? How are they going to keep the country safe? All right, let's listen to this Michael Bordenaro clip about Americans in their wallets. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Gladiator Barley. This will help to build muscle, bring down inflammation, soak up those free radicals or superoxide dismutase, and detoxify your body. Detoxifying your body and bringing down inflammation is super important for your endocrine system, your immune system, even your brain function, and it will help you to recover from your workout. So take Gladiator Barley every day. It's a high density protein, very powerful. Another great product is Boomer Boost. Boomer Boost will help to rev up your energy levels and improve your metabolism. It'll help with your heart health and your vascular system, your brain function, your musculature, slow down the aging process. Take this every day. Take one scooper. This is a month supply. Take one scooper a day. Mix it with soft foods, filtered water, a smoothie, or even with milk. But take it every day, and you'll notice that you'll have a boost of energy throughout the whole day. You're going to start feeling the effects of this within 72 hours. And when you're taking this every day over a longer period of time, you're going to actually notice that you are aging slower. You will physically see yourself aging slower. And not only that, you're going to feel better. You're going to feel healthier. And why? Because your endocrine system and your immune system and your cardiovascular system, your brain function are all working better. So please go to my store and get this. This is something that is a major cornerstone to the anti-aging protocol and to boost up that immune system. And Digestive enzyme complex. Digestive enzyme complex will reduce the load on your pancreas so you can digest your proteins, lipids, and carbohydrates. Super important to take. In addition, take digestive enzyme complex during the fall and the winter season. Why? Because it has bromelain in it. It'll help to break up clots. And it has the proteolytic enzymes to break up glycoproteins, which is super important. You're going to need this for the fall and the winter. But not just that, take this every day to help your pancreatic health and to help with your digestion. And Myotrol, if you're 40 years of age or older, take Myotrol. It's going to help you build muscle. It has polyphenols, flavonoids, and lignans to help with the gene expression to build muscle. Do some resistance training, take the Myotrol. Myotrol will also help with your mitochondrial health. And stack it with the gladiator barley, do that resistance training, and guess what? You're going to build muscle. This is for males and females. It's really important to maintain your bone density and your musculature to slow down the aging process and so you have more vitality. Super important. Now, if you're an athlete, younger or older, you'll benefit from this too to gain strength for your sport. So please go to my store, get the Myotrol. No matter if you're an athlete or not, you should be taking this, especially if you're 40 years of age or older, to help with the gene expression. And take the gladiator barley. And the gladiator barley is the high density protein that will help you to have the building blocks to build the muscle. Myotrol helps with the gene expression to build the muscle. These are synergistic and will help you build the musculature that you need. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
We just got the most recent consumer spending data from the Federal Reserve, and it's not looking good. But I see some news outlets trying to turn this into a positive, because the thing is that credit card spending has been essentially flat for the last few months of 2025. And they're saying that the reason for it is that consumers are not confident in the economy, which could definitely be one of the reasons. I think there's a lot more to it than that. So I want to dive into what's going on with consumer spending habits right now and see what we can make of it. As of August of 2025, total U.S. consumer debt climbed to a little over 5.06 trillion, which is a new all-time high, which is all different types of debt that people hold, not just credit card debt. We're talking mortgage debt, personal loans, auto loans, student loans, credit card debt, buy now, pay later. About 1.31 trillion of that 5 trillion is credit card debt, and 3.76 trillion of it is non-revolving credit, things like the auto loans, student loans, and personal loans. And the revolving credit portion of it actually fell 5.45% in the most recent month, which is a rare dip that might reflect households could be hitting their limits or paying down balances after heavy summer spending. My guess is it's on the first one. People are hitting their limits. They actually cannot spend more on the credit cards because there's probably nothing left to spend in many cases. Like, you can only go so far before you max out a credit card. And say you already have, 5 credit cards and 3 of them are close to being maxed out, you're probably going to be very, very hesitant to put any balance on the other 2 because you might be saving that for an emergency. This is my last resort credit card that I have to use, like break glass in case of an emergency type of deal. Make no mistake, even with this decline in credit card spending, credit card debt still remains at near record level highs right now, which suggests that consumers have been leaning heavily on credit cards to cover their everyday expenses. And we know this is happening from previous reports, as well as the rampant use of buy now, pay later to buy things even like groceries now. And the other thing you have to look at with this report is that non-revolving credit still continues to grow. Auto and student loans rose 2% in August, which is continuing their climb upwards, and borrowers are still financing major purchases despite the higher interest rates, showing that credit demand outside of credit cards still remains strong, which in my opinion means I need to buy the new car because my old one stopped working, so I need to buy that. It's not optional. So here I am. Regardless of what the interest rates are, this is something I have to do so I can pick up my kids from school and go to work. It's just so funny that the way that some of these economists paint the economy with some of this economic data, like the interpretations are so different, and obviously they want you to believe things are going well. You know, just like with the retail spending going up, right? It's like, well, the retail spending is going up because it has to. People have to spend more today than they did a year ago. So naturally, the retail spending is in line with inflation. People are not voluntarily spending more. They're spending more because of inflation. And the amount of money that people are spending is a little bit more than what the inflation numbers are showing us officially. So to me, that's basic common sense. But to economists, it means that the economy is booming. But another thing that this slowdown in borrowing could be is it also could be tighter lending standards, or it could be growing concerns about job security and the higher interest rates that people have to pay on this debt. I think it's a combination of all of it. I think people are worried about their jobs. We know that they are, because most people in a recent survey said that they are worried about losing their job and finding work if they are put in that position. And it's not going to be as easy to borrow when you already have a high debt to income ratio. And the higher interest rates should be a deterrent for people to borrow money that they don't really need. So of course you're going to see people continue to borrow money to buy cars, because that's something that people need. It's not optional, right? If you live in an area that's car dependent, like here, you can see all the cars parked on the street and in driveways. You need to have one. If you don't have one, it's going to make your life miserable trying to get to and from work, relying on public transportation. I like to look at the big picture with everything, which is that people are more stretched out with debt than they ever have been before, with consumer debt levels at all-time highs, and credit card interest rates are still sitting at around 22% for most cards, and people are paying record amounts of interest on these cards. So it's kind of a deterrent to continue spending on them unless it's absolutely necessary. But here's the thing. A sustained slowdown in credit card growth could also point to weaker spending ahead, which matters for the broader US economy, considering that 70% of US GDP is derived solely from spending. So if people are seriously tapped out and the spending slows down significantly, well, no wonder we're going to see a dip in GDP, because it all relies on that. We also know that consumer sentiment has been way down recently, basically at the levels that we saw during the last big recession in 2008. So for people, it's like, give me a reason I should spend more right now. You know, I can't. I'm barely hanging on as it is with the expenses I have. And of course, I'm spending 4% more at the store this year because I have to. That's not because I want to. But I'll tell you what.
It's important to survey the whole landscape to understand the stresses in the world, stresses in the economy. But inflation and indebtedness and interest payments are a big problem in the United States. And that's at the household level. You can just imagine at the government level with the $37 trillion of debt that we have. Now, are we in the doom loop yet? No. But we might soon, maybe. Look at what's happening with the UK. And when you are looking at things with multiple variables that may even seem disparate, there is an emergent property that takes place with these complex systems, and something bad could happen. What I will put under the rubric, a curse on the earth is coming. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. It's important to improve your health, because the best way to save money in the long term is to control your health and improve your health the best that you can. Get the ashwagandha root. This is going to help to control your cortisol levels and your blood glucose levels. Really important. All right? Diabetes is a major problem in the United States. All right? You need to stop having the sugary substances and control your blood glucose levels. Turmeric, bring down inflammation, and also helps to soak up free radicals By bringing down inflammation, you're going to help your immune system and your cardiovascular system. Lignans helps your immune system, your endocrine system, brings down inflammation and soaks up free radicals. So a great stack that will help to boost up that immune system, help with your cardiovascular system and your brain function by bringing down inflammation is taking the turmeric, the ashwagandha, and the lignans. This is a very powerful stack. Very, very powerful. You should take this every day, but especially during the fall and the winter. Why? Because you're bringing down inflammation. You're boosting up that immune system. You're soaking up free radicals. It's really important. So please go to my store, get this stack. The turmeric, the ashwagandha, and the lignans. Take it every day, but especially during the fall and winter, and boost up that immune system. All right, let's listen to Mark Levin.
Host of Life, Liberty, and Levin. Mark, good to have you with us. Obviously, we are watching history unfold on so many levels in the Middle East right now. Your reaction to where this stands as we wait for Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner to begin expected meetings with Benjamin Netanyahu in Jerusalem?
Well, thank you, Martha. You know, there's a genius to this with these different phases, phase 1 and 2. Phase 1, the release of the hostages, and unfortunately, the release of a lot of these deadly prisoners. But phase 2 is going to be the key, as some of the people have mentioned earlier on the network. What happens to Hamas? What exactly is going to happen with Hamas? We don't know. And that's very, very important. So I think phase 2 is where some of the dirty work has to be figured out. I'm guessing they're meeting with the Prime Minister, not just to have a donut, but to try and figure that out with him and so forth. But the genius of this was the way they carved it out. The hostages come out first. That's very, very important, obviously, to us, to the Israeli people and so forth. Now the question is, how do you secure Israel? How do you prevent Hamas from doing what it did again? How do you ensure that there's demilitarization of Gaza? So it is an extensive process. Again, I think it was brilliantly determined on these phases and so forth. And I would say this didn't just happen. This didn't just happen. The President of the United States and the bringing together of these Arab countries, and people don't understand, all these Arab countries don't think the same. They don't agree the same. These are tribal. Some of them hate each other's guts. Some of them have been to war with each other. Some of them tried to overthrow each other. So that was a marvelous accomplishment. And in addition to that, the Israelis, if the Israelis hadn't defeated Hezbollah, hadn't defeated Iran with the president bombing out those nuclear sites, putting the Houthis in their place, even though now and then they fire up a missile, and today have the city of Gaza surrounded, ready to destroy them, I don't know that we'd be here today. That's a point I wanted to make. And the other point I wanted to make, boy, does an election make a difference. You have Donald Trump, who stood with Israel 100%. You have Donald Trump, who prevented this arms embargo that the Biden regime was involved in. You had Donald Trump, who shut off the money to Iran when the Biden regime was funding their military directly and indirectly. You have Donald Trump, who made it clear those hostages are coming out. You're not going to have nuclear weapons. And he meant what he said, and he did what he wanted to do, what he said he would do against, people in our own country, the Democrats, the media, the isolations, and so forth. This is a great leader, Donald Trump. And for Israel, Netanyahu, who has been a great, great leader and military leader, because let's keep something in mind. Hamas was supposed to be one of the attacks against Israel. They were going to be attacked in the north, the south, and the east. Hezbollah, Hamas, and Iran. In this tiny country of 9 million people, surrounded, basically defeated Hezbollah, defeated Iran in 12 days, and has Hamas surrounded in urban warfare like we had to fight in Iraq. And so I don't think our media gives enough credit to Benjamin Netanyahu as they try to destroy him. I don't think anybody gives Donald Trump enough credit. He deserves it. People talk about a Nobel Peace Prize. I think it was 2019. Martha, that this time in 2019, Barack Obama got a Nobel Peace Prize. You know what he got it for? I don't know what he got it for, because he found the men's room in the Oval Office. I don't know what he got the Nobel Peace Prize.
He hadn't had time to do too much. Just by getting elected, he got a Nobel Peace Prize essentially, and that prize will be announced tomorrow. I think there are obvious.
You know why he got the Nobel Peace Prize, Barack Obama? Was because he was black. He's not even fully black. He's mulatto. So but he was the first black American president. Who should have received the Nobel Peace Prize was maybe the voters in the United States, but Barack Obama, no, he didn't do anything, and he even admits it in his memoirs. He didn't feel that he deserved it. He should have declined it. That's what he should have done. But but the thing is that Barack Obama did state in his memoirs that he didn't deserve it. But but the thing is he didn't
There's a lot of people who think that President Trump should be getting it based on the really incredible, unprecedented nature of the shift in the Middle East. And as you're so right, Mark, you see these Arab nations who have differences coming together. You see Iran isolated to the point that we have not seen.
What's interesting about the Nobel Peace Prize and Barack Obama, that's kind of like another data point showing, participation. Oh, you participated. You won the presidency. Oh, you must be peaceful because you're you're the first black man as president. But how many people did he really kill with the drone warfare that we had? With the war against terrorism in the Middle East? Did he try to ramp down the war? Now, in his memoirs, he was trying to. There was part of his administration was the surge, and then the other part of the administration was to try to de-escalate it. But he was fighting the Pentagon, so he did want to end the war. So you got to give him the benefit of the doubt. There was slow walking by the Pentagon to try to prevent Barack Obama's policies to be instituted in the Middle East. Now, how do we know that? Well, we just have to look at what was transpiring during his second term. But not just that, it's in his memoirs. Now, but Barack Obama was not wasn't a peaceful guy. Now, Trump, he's disliked. He'll never get it. Why? Because he's disliked. But Barack Obama didn't do anything. If anything, people could say that he caused more destruction and division in the world. But he got it because of a participation. He participated, won an election, and because he was black, he received it. That was the main reason why. It was an element of DEI. It's an element of participation. No, here's your participation award.
Hamas, basically had to give in to this deal because they don't have anyone supporting them at this point. They're extremely isolated, extremely decimated militarily. And I think that, this was the least worst choice for them at this time. I just want to put one quick thing up here, which is this Quinnipiac polling. And I think you already touched on what I think your answer is going to be about why this is. But when you look back at August of 2025, November 2023, do your sympathies lie more with Israelis or Palestinians? This is the Quinnipiac poll. And back in November of 2023, Americans said plus 30 to the Israeli sympathies support side. August of 2025, it moved dramatically. Palestinians +1. What's your thought on that, Mark, before I let you go?
Well, it's frightening. Propaganda works. We have money coming into our country, into our schools and universities, brainwashing our children. Keep in mind the hate for our country and our founding is growing at the college level and the university level and throughout the country as well. This is what happens when the truth doesn't get out. And still the truth isn't getting out about what's taken place here, that what Israel's had to do and the way that they've done it. So far, the enemy, the terrorists, won the propaganda war. It's not a PR issue with Israel. Israel doesn't control the American media. It doesn't control the Democrat Party. It doesn't control the Neanderthal isolationists in my party. It's a tiny country that doesn't have anything like the money that these other countries have. They pour into our country to influence what's taking place. And so that's my take on that. It's horrific.
Mark, thank you very much. We'll all be glued to every movement in the next few days and hoping, all of us, for the moment when we see these hostages returned home to their families who have been waiting for them in Jerusalem. And we remember the Americans who were killed in the process of October the 7th, who did not get a lot of attention over the last several years in many ways.
You know what
Mark,
we
thank
should have
you
had
very much.
when this all happened? When this all happened on October 7th, this is something that really pisses me off. All right. If there were an American citizen that was captured, that was a hostage during October 7th, if I was president, I would make sure that they would be coming back or unleash hell on earth and totally destroy the Gazans. All right? Now, this was under brain dead Biden. So whoever was running the show decided not to really pay attention to the importance of American citizens being involved in this and that they needed to be brought home. So Blinken, would go back and forth on his jet, trying to negotiate some sort of peaceful way of getting the hostages back, which failed. No, you send in SEAL Team 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and kick fucking ass. Because it was unacceptable, 100% unacceptable to have a president of the United States not bringing back American citizens from a hostage situation and letting fucking Hamas run the show. So destroying Gaza just because of that was worth it. But you know what we have? A bunch of fucking liberals that aren't willing to fucking get anything done and stand up for God, country, and family. No, instead, what they'll do is they'll let Harvard students rise up a Palestinian flag in place of an American flag, which is totally fucking unacceptable. All right. So, all these bleeding heart liberals, you're whining about all the death and destruction that happened. Hamas should have never, ever, 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 ever captured an American citizen. And when those hostages said that they were an American citizen, Hamas should have let them go right away. No. We didn't have Biden have the balls, nor Blinken have the balls to make sure that our American citizens were brought home alive. No, we couldn't do that. Because liberals are weak. Weak.
Número 1 desde el kindergarten hasta el grado 12 en la ciudad de Nueva York. Eso significa excelencia en artes y atletismo. Maestros de ajedrez.
All right, this video here is from Las Vegas, so it's amazing that they're speaking in Spanish. All right, but this is Harvard and Trump's administration nears settlement to end civil rights probe. All right. Now, I was at an event where someone very deep in the process of what's going on between Trump and Harvard, and this lawyer stated, all right, the reason why Harvard is afraid to give the admission data and the applicant data to the Department of Education and to, I think, Homeland Security is because that data is going to show that Harvard has not been following the law and that they have been doing racial profiling to put more blacks into the school. And that's why they don't want to show the data, because you know who has been accepted to the Harvard College. All right? But you don't know the applicant pool. But the applicant pool is at Harvard and hasn't been given to Homeland Security, hasn't been given to the State Department, hasn't been given to the Department of Education. And when you compare the two and you know their race, you will be able to see on how skewed the process is. And they don't want to show that. All right. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the collagen. Collagen is dual purpose. It's going to help with your skin, your hair, your nails. It'll also help with your musculature, your joint health, your cartilage, and your bone density. Take it every day. This is a month's supply. Super important to take. And get the olive leaf extract. Olive leaf extract, dual purpose. Helps with your immune system and your cardiovascular system. It brings down inflammation and it helps you to control your lipid profile. Super important. Stack them together. You're helping with your musculature and your bone density and your skin. And you're helping with your immune system and your cardiovascular system. Take them together. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5 and get $5 off any order.
I'm Matt Gelka in Washington, where the battle between the Trump administration and Harvard University could be ending soon. The president says a long-running feud with Harvard University could soon be coming to an end.
Now, this is something that we're close to finalizing. We haven't done it yet. But they put up $500 million. Interest and everything else would go to that account.
According to Trump, a deal is close that would see the Ivy League institution paying $500 million and also running trade schools that would focus on artificial intelligence and engine building, among other things.
It's a big investment in trade school done by very smart people. And then their sins are forgiven.
Harvard had yet to confirm or deny the details as of Wednesday afternoon. The settlement could be the end to a feud that has lasted almost all of the time since Trump took office in January. The Trump administration had accused the school of not doing enough to protect Jewish students and combat anti-Semitism.
Now this is exactly this when they did this encampment in front of John Harvard. This is when they rose up the flag of the Palestinian above John Harvard, where the American flag flies. That is totally unacceptable. You know why it's unacceptable? Because almost every major fucking war that this country has had, my family has fought in. Almost every single fucking war. Now, that goes all the way back to the Revolution. It is totally fucking unacceptable for snot-nosed kids from an Ivy League school to raise the Palestinian flag in place of the American flag. Totally unacceptable.
Protests spread across college campuses. The charges and Harvard's pushback led to an escalating attempt to stop the university from receiving research funding from the government. A $2 billion freeze was put in place earlier in the year that halted money from going to the school.
Sure, it hurts Harvard, but it hurts the country. The research funding is given to universities and other research institutions to carry out work that the research work that the federal government designates as high priority work.
Yes, that's true. That's true, but you got to go into the details. That was in May when he was being interviewed on NPR. That's Garber, President Garber, who replaced Claudine Gay, who happens to be Jewish. All right? But the thing is that he doesn't dive into the details. One, there's about $100 billion approximately that is issued annually for research. There's about 300,000 papers that are published, peer-reviewed, from that 100 billion. All right? About 300,000. How many do you think Harvard does? About 10,000 of that 300,000. There are over 325, 350, somewhere in there, maybe it's 321, Carnegie level research institutes. Carnegie, what is called the R1 and R2. There are 500 research institutes. So there's an additional 200 or so on top of the Carnegie R1 and R2 designation. The far majority of the research papers are state schools. The far majority of the research that's published is not coming from the Ivy League. Now, Harvard gets about $1 billion of the 100 billion. So they get about 1%. In terms of the papers, they get about 3.3% of the papers that are published. Now, it's hard to understand when someone says if Harvard's grants are pulled for research, that scientific endeavors are going to fall. Really? They only do 3.3% of the published papers. Now, if you don't believe me, go to PubMed and type out anything in STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. Look at the last 5 years of publication of any topic you want to dive into. All right? Look at the last 5 years, go to a scholarly journal, peer-reviewed, and I'm willing to bet that less than 1 out of every 50 articles has some sort of affiliation with Harvard as an author. Less than 1. In any subject. So that means that Harvard isn't really contributing that much compared to the perception. See, this is the issue, the perception versus the reality. The reality is far more of the cutting edge research is not coming from Ivy League or Ivy League Plus. The far majority is coming from state schools that are R1 or R2, Carnegie designated. They need the money because it fills a budget hole because they skim the grants that are coming from the federal government for admin. That's why they're so worried.
With the school last month, calling the Trump administration's anti-Semitism argument a smokescreen for a targeted, ideologically motivated assault on the school and ordered the funding to be unfrozen. If Harvard agrees to the settlement, they'd be the latest school to pay the administration. Brown University had a $50 million deal. Columbia University settled for more than $220 million. And this week, the Justice Department announced it would look into anti-Semitism allegations at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, adding to a growing list of dozens of colleges targeted by the Trump administration. Reporting in Washington, I'm Matt Gelman.
University of Ann Arbor, University of Michigan of Ann Arbor is on there. University of Chicago, Rice, Ohio State, Yale, Western Michigan. University of Wisconsin. Let's see. And he's going after a lot of these schools. But the point that I'm making here is that we are being told by the media that the Ivy League and the Ivy League Plus, which is approximately 30 schools, are the bulk of the important research that's being conducted, which is just flat out wrong. It's just flat out wrong. That's not data. Harvard does approximately 10,000 papers, peer-reviewed papers annually. They get about 1% of the grants. The far majority of the papers are not Ivy League or Ivy League Plus. Now people would say, well, it's not about the paper, it's about the quality. All right, then dive into the granularity. You search different topics in STEM, maybe 10 different topics, and look at the different scholarly journals in the last 5 years, and I'm willing to bet that you will not find that many Harvard affiliated researchers as authors publishing any subject, physics, engineering, chemistry, I don't care, biotech, I don't care what the subject is. Just try it. All right, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the resveratrol. Resveratrol will soak up free radicals. It's an antioxidant. It's going to help the health of the mitochondria. It's going to help to improve cellular metabolism and your energy levels. It helps with youthful gene expression, and it helps you to get rid of cells that are in senescence. I've been taking resveratrol for decades. It stacks well with C60, NAD+, ubiquinol, clarity factor. So please go to my store and get the resveratrol. And good night formula, really important to get into 3 cycles to 5 cycles of REM sleep a night. So you're consolidating memory, detoxifying your central nervous system, and you'll be well rested. Chronic sleep deprivation can lead to early onset of dementia. And if you're not getting enough sleep, you're going to age faster. So it's really important to get the good night formula. Take it every night, drink it with filtered water, and get a good night's sleep, and be in those cycles of REM sleep that are going to help with your brain function, but also help to bring down those cortisol levels. And when you don't have elevated cortisol levels that are chronic, then guess what? Your immune system gets better. So go to my store, get the good night formula, and slow down the aging process, boost up that immune system, and your brain function. All right, let's go to MSNBC talking about the billionaire, how a billionaire Trump ally emerged as the key broker in the Harvard fight.
There are hardliners in the administration that are true.
Our New York Times investigative reporter Michael Schmidt, he co-wrote a new report looking at how prominent Wall Street executive, Blackstone Group chief executive Stephen A. Schwarzman has emerged as a key broker in the Trump administration's fight with Harvard.
Michael, it's fascinating. It's fascinating in part because you've said Donald Trump wants it fine. He wants to get this stuff. So Steve Schwarzman is stepping in to try to settle this for him. Schwarzman, a big supporter of Donald Trump, Harvard, and Yale, and other. But Donald Trump is having some people in his own administration undermining it. Tell us about that.
So if we think of the first Trump term, it was very balkanized, right? You had all these different factions that were fighting over each other. They couldn't get a lot done. The second term is far less balkanized. But on this issue of the higher education fight that's going on, there are 2 different factions. There are folks like Trump who want a deal. They want to be able to announce, hey, Harvard is giving $500 million. They've bent the knee. They've given in. Let's move on. I can put it out on Truth Social. Then there are hardliners in the administration that are true ideologues on this issue, like Harmeet Dillon, the head of the Civil Rights Division at the Justice Department, who think the deal in place right now is too favorable to Harvard, that Harvard needs to give up more, that it needs to have a monitor, that it needs to be giving the government more say in what it's doing.
It's not going to ever do that.
But it's interesting. Harvard knew that there was this problem. They knew that there was a gap between Trump and those people in the administration slowing it down. So they used Schwarzman to go around them and go to Trump to try and restart the negotiations. Schwarzman gets in touch with Trump last week. And what does Trump do? He announces we've got a deal.
Yeah.
And then says, oh, wait, we've got to paper over it, and we've got to figure out the fine print of it all and such. Yeah. But it did restart these negotiations. Now, Schwarzman is the lead voice for Harvard at the negotiating table with Trump. And it's sort of a sign of how Trump's administration works, in the sense that here you have a titan of business who has basically decided to come in here at the 8th inning and says, oh, I'm gonna pitch. I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna try and resolve this. And that is a unique thing to the Trump administration.
But yeah, that's why that's what's so different between the first term and the second term. First term, you have people like Gary Cohn and all these other people around that would be sort of talking about this. You had strong chiefs of staff. Now, you don't have that. You have Susie Wiles, who runs a really tight ship. But that tight ship is all directed towards Donald Trump, doing what Donald Trump wants to do.
Well, she's not an ideologue. So basically, what we need right now is the equivalent of Steve Schwartzman for immigration to say, hey, claim victory. Let's not take the economy. So what is Schwartzman going to be able to claim a win in this? Like, how is this really going? Is the other camp going to give up and say, okay, Trump announced a deal, we've got to move on? Or is the higher education fight going to, calm down a little bit, frankly?
So we can't see into, there's something really standing in the way, because if Trump says, like, we've got a deal and this should be done, then, like, why is it that they're still going back and forth? And we don't totally understand, like, what is the true holdup here? Because if Trump wants something, like in his administration, he usually gets it. Immediately. Almost certainly. And he announced that this deal was done. But here we are almost a week out after he's done this, and it's still not there.
And John, what's so weird is this whole Harvard fight started by accident. Like, an email was sent to Harvard that was accidentally sent, but Harvard responded to it.
Yeah, and then the administration tried to recall it, and then it's, let's just fight. Like, this battle, the battle lines are already drawn. And stark contrast to those schools like Columbia, which just folded. But Michael, there seems like there could be more coming, right? This reporting in the last few days about other higher institutions that the administration is demanding, to your point about ideologues, saying, hey, you have to agree to this compact, like with new conditions of how you're going to teach and admit students, or we're going to withhold every dime of funding.
You have to understand, the higher education fight is a whole of government approach to take on higher education. They are using every different department and agency they can to put pressure on Harvard and these other schools to bend the knee and do what they want.
And tell us about Yale.
Yale's is sort of the...
Well, you got to get back to the point. You got to get there. They got to get to the reason why. Where are they starting with first principles? What are we understanding? How did we get to this point? These schools are producing ultra liberals that are getting into corporate America and getting into government that's pushing an agenda that will weaken our country, erode the pillars of God, country, and family, and desecrate our Constitution. Now, in addition to that, they're pushing policies that are making the society less productive with this DEI. You have students that don't know how to think anymore. I mean, literally, there's something wrong with the millennials. A lot of these kids that are coming out of these schools are not that smart. Are not smart. Now, it's because of their environment and what they've been molded into. They're not thinking critically. They think some Marxist takeover is a great thing for democracy. They think that killing the goose that laid the golden egg, aka capitalism, killing that goose is a good idea. Let's bring in Marxism. What? I mean, I'm reading a book from William F. Buckley that was written in 1950, when was it, 54 or something like that. But it's God and man at Yale. All right. Now, this is his critique of when he was at Yale about conservatism and liberalism, about individualism and collectivism, and the importance of being more conservative. Because what's happening in these schools, is that they're demonizing capitalism. They're demonizing a constitutional republic. They're brainwashed. So that's one of the reasons why. The second reason is, what about foreign nations coming in, supporting these schools like China and pushing a certain agenda? So there's like a CCP infiltration that's taking place, or regional studies, or joint ventures between the school and other regions like GETTR, to try to mold the mindset of the youth. So this isn't a short-term play, this is a long-term play by the Qataris. Because they know within 10 years, they can change the mindset of the electorate. They can change the mindset of the masses in the United States, of government officials, as these youth move up the ladder in power. It is important that the conservatives push back, extremely important. So you have infiltration of foreign governments in our educational system, because the schools love the money. They don't care about the ethics, but they love the money. Then they're lying to our representatives and doing things behind the scenes to try to circumvent the justice, the Supreme Court and its rulings on what emissions, the way emissions should be. It's a big problem. So the government, it's right to get into the business of higher education. Why? Because it's the government that helps support it. Now, if we stop supporting it, then the government doesn't really have that much say. But they need the money. They need it. And not only that, Harvard and these elite institutions feel that there's an obligation of the government to give them the money. They have hubris. They feel as though the American taxpayer must give money to Harvard. Really? Really? Must? Why? Oh, we do great research. Well, I just gave you an example on that's not the case. There are many schools that are doing great research. There's 500. So there's an issue here. Produce citizens that are productive, that aren't divisive, and that makes our nation a better union. But if you're creating a bunch of Marxists running around trying to deconstruct capitalism, then you got a problem, especially when you're asking for taxpayer money. And most of these intellectuals that are at the faculty that have tenure, most of them are liberal or ultra liberal. And they feel as though they can say anything that they want and they're protected because they have tenure. And in many ways they do. That's true. But the thing is that they feel as though they can push an agenda and there's no ramification. They still get their money. There's no feedback loop that says, well, wait a minute here, that's not what society wants. Now, there is a philosophical argument. Should the masses determine what the society should do, or should it be the elites? You know, this is a Plato thought of this. The Platonic concept was that the elites should make the decision, not the masses. Well, Aristotle was saying that the masses should make the decision. So there's this debate between Aristotle and Plato. Should we have the Ivy League elites pushing Marxism, guiding the ship of this constitutional republic? Or should it be the will of the people? Now, sometimes the will of the people is pretty stupid. But I think that the elites are so crazy liberal that they're going to break the system. And I think this is the reason why Buckley, in this book, God and Man at Yale, is so important to digest and understand this, the need for the pendulum to swing towards conservatism, to improve God, country, and family. and those affinities to have some sort of foundation for the society. Because if you don't have morality through religion or some sort of spirituality, it devolves. If you don't have an affinity towards family, you don't have the building block of society, and eventually you're going to have a problem with your economy. And if you don't have an affinity to country, then anything goes. It's a relativism. Relativism is bad. It's bad for art, and it's bad for philosophy, and it's bad for our economy. Anything goes, it doesn't matter. Shit on the flag, it doesn't matter. That's relativism. You don't need borders. That's, we can just have unfettered flow of illegal immigrants. Because it's relative. It doesn't matter. Really? No culture is any more important than another. That's relativism. But if you have unfettered immigration, and you don't have individuals that are coming to the country and actually adopting that culture, then what happens is you've watered down that cultural makeup that allowed for that constitutional republic to be flourishing. Relativism is a wrong philosophy.
Right. Anything about Yale?
Do you know why?
I don't know, but I think you have to look at it through what you were saying about Harvard. Harvard decided to fight. And because Harvard decided to fight, the administration decided to fight. And they've basically gone to war for many months. And immense damage has been done to Harvard because of that. And to your point, it could all be based on a miscommunication. And that's a larger problem. That if you have miscommunications that go on between powerful institutions, Harvard and the administration, that end up in months and months of carnage, not actual carnage, but carnage in terms of the damage to Harvard, that we're in a vulnerable position in a lot of different ways because Harvard didn't trust that Trump was acting above board. They saw this letter that came into them and they said, wow, this is crazy. We have no choice but to fight. And they went to war. And by the time the missiles were in the air, everyone was firing at each other.
All right, New York Times investigative reporter Michael Schmidt, thank you. As always, great to have you on. His latest piece is available to read online right now. And Elise Jordan, thank you as well. We'll be watching The Weekend Prime Time right here on MSNBC.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. You can get it in extra virgin olive oil, MCT coconut oil, MCT coconut oil, and avocado oil. C60 is a very potent antioxidant. You take a teaspoon a day every day, preferably on an empty stomach. And what this will do is soak up free radicals. And by soaking up free radicals at the cellular level, your cells will perform better, have less stress. Your mitochondria will perform better. You'll have more energy. The cells will perform, the tissues will perform better, the organ systems will perform better. They'll slow down the aging process, boost up your immune system, improve your endocrine system, help with your brain function, and improve your cardiovascular system. How? By soaking up free radicals at the vascular level within your bloodstream, you're reducing oxidized LDL. When you are reducing the concentrations of oxidized LDL, you're reducing plaque formation. Super important. And guess what? This will help with your neurons. By bringing down stress in the neuron, the myelin sheaths will be healthier. So your neurons will function better. The mitochondria in the neuron will function better. You'll have more ATP for the neuron. You need lots of ATP for neurons to help with the processes that are taking place in the neuron, especially creating neurotransmitters. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. You can get it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. Take a teaspoon a day every day. I've been doing this protocol since 2016. And what you'll also notice is that the basal layer for your skin improves because you're helping the health of the adult stem cells that are at the basal layer that are producing your new skin cells. Stack it with resveratrol to get that added benefit for the skin. But you'll start noticing around in 2 months the effects of C60. soaking up those free radicals and helping your different tissues to perform, helping your endocrine system and your immune system and your brain function. By taking this for a year, you're going to see a physical difference with your skin. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the C60, take it every day, teaspoon a day. Very potent. It's 1,000 times more potent than vitamin C. Please go to my store and get the C60. Take it every day. All right, let's listen to Fox. Again, Marxists in retreat.
This is something that we're close to finalizing, we haven't done it yet. But they put up $500 million, interest and everything else would go to that account, meaning go to the trade school. And, it's a big investment in trade school, done by very smart people. And then, there seems to
President Trump says his administration has reached a deal with Harvard University after a months-long feud and legal battle. Now he's asking other universities to sign a compact to uphold the administration's higher education policies or risk losing federal funding. Let's bring in American Culture Project Senior Fellow Corey DeAngelis. Corey, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mike.
So what's your reaction to a potential deal with Harvard?
This is fantastic news. The Marxists are in retreat and Trump continues to rack up the W's. We saw this with Brown University's agreement, Columbia University's agreement. And at the end of the day, it's going to be a win-win solution. Harvard was set to lose billions of dollars in federal funding every single year. They saw the writing on the wall. And so this is good news. I mean, they should lose federal funding for other reasons as well. I mean, they're so political. If you look at Open Secret's website, 95% of the political contributions from Harvard University affiliates have gone to Democrats. It's a one-sided political organization as opposed to an educational institution. But I'm glad that they are retreating on this issue and trying to be more reasonable with President Trump. Although they just hired someone named Lahore Vajistan, a drag queen. So Trump may want to reconsider that deal and maybe make that part of the conversation too.
All right, the Trump administration is laying out a set of operating principles it would like universities to agree to in exchange for preferential access to federal funds. Vanderbilt University tweeting out, quote, Vanderbilt University was among 9 institutions invited by the White House to review the Compact for Academic Excellence in Higher Education. We look forward to carefully reviewing the compact and providing meaningful feedback to the administration. What is your assessment?
Yeah, look, Trump's got his foot on the gas to make education great again in America. And look, with this higher education initiative, it's returning a sense of sanity and merit to higher education, getting testing involved again, whether it's the SAT or the ACT. He should take it a step further and say that these colleges must accept alternatives and break that duopoly from the College Board and have things like the classic learning test as well to have more conservative students go into higher education as well. Because part of this White House announcement was about how there's just so much far left indoctrination at the higher education level right now. We need to balance things out. Look, schools are supposed to be ideas where you have debates and free and open conversations.
Exactly. He's bringing a great point. And this was brought up in 1950s through William F. Buckley. All right? Academic freedom. How do you have academic freedom when you have an institution that's pushing anti-capitalism and an anti-religious agenda? They're pushing that. They're pushing anti-capitalism and an anti-religious agenda. That's not freedom. That's a dogma.
Side of the aisle.
I want to get to the story that we teased. Zohran Mamdani, who is the nominee for mayor in New York City, many consider him the favorite at this point, saying he's going to pull funding for kindergartners who are talented, gifted and talented kindergartners. What about that?
He's not just pulling funding for those kids, he's pulling up the ladder from behind himself. He went to a private school himself here in New York City that cost over $60,000 per year in tuition. It's your textbook champagne socialist school choice for me, but not for thee. And look.
A correction, this was published in 1951, not 1954. But the point here is that this conversation has been going on post World War II. Now this is interesting because that's when you started seeing a lot of people pushing Keynesianism. There was the Labor Party and the movement of kind of a socialistic agenda in Europe that started to come into the United States. You know, this was kind of like the holdover of FDR, right? And then Eisenhower comes in, he's Republican. And then all of a sudden, JFK comes in, Democrat, Lyndon Johnson, he ends up ramping up the Vietnam War. So there was this shift from right after the war, World War II, and institutions pushing this Keynesian agenda, this liberal agenda, eroding religion, eroding spirituality. And then fast forward to 2025. This is the effects of it. This is the effects of it. And this is what William F. Buckley was warning about. He was dead right. And he was just commenting on the microcosm at an elite institution. Now people would say, oh, the whole world's run by skull and bones and the whole world's run by elite institutions and blah, blah, blah. There are people within these elite institutions and skull and bones that are actually trying to fight the system, that are conservative. And guess what? William F. Buckley was one of them. He was a skull and bone, he was a bonesman. And he was a conservative. So these people that keep on saying, oh, the Freemasons and all these secret societies and are orchestrating, you know, the destruction of the country. No, but there is a battle that's taking place. And unfortunately, the conservatives are in lower numbers. But within these elite institutions or secret societies, there is a battle going on between conservative and liberal, between individualism and collectivism, between free markets and a controlled economy. So if you're going to just broad brush all of Harvard's bad, no. But the thing is that there's not enough conservatives pushing back. There needs to be more people like me pushing back. And more people like William F. Buckley pushing back.
These kids need a better opportunity. The problem is that Zohar Mamdani is a socialist who doesn't have to live with his own policy proposals. He had these opportunities before. He went to a specialized high school in New York City as well and benefited from that. But he has the endorsement of the teachers union, the UFT here, and in fact,
and the teachers union have blue hair and are very liberal. Most of them are very liberal. Part of the reason why is because they love their pension, they love, you know, their time off between semesters, and they love to retire in a low tax state like Florida. Amazing how that works, right? They hate free markets. They hate Republicans, but when they are retired, they want to have low taxes. And this is the self-centeredness that I would say germinated during the baby boom generation. They draft dodged. They didn't, you know, they wanted their peace and love, and, you know, and fast forward to where we're at right now. $37 trillion in debt. A big part of our financial problems is the over-reliance of Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Thank you, baby boomer. Thank you. Thank you, baby boomer, for screwing up the United States. Draft dodging baby boomers.
Are happy about the endorsement of Zohar Mamdani because the union has gotten so political. In fact, Randy Weingarten was on radio the other day, and a teacher from New York City Public Schools called in and said, you know, you guys have gone so far off the deep end with this Mamdani endorsement. And Randy even said to him, she said the quiet part out loud, that if you don't like it, she said the union is going to be as political as it wants to be. And if you don't like it, you can take your dues funding somewhere else. And so teachers should listen to her and pull their funding from the union, stop giving your money to the Democrats, and join alternatives like the Teacher Freedom Alliance who don't engage in woke politics.
Corey DeAngelis, great to see you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mike.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern.
That's my transmission for today. Thank you for listening. Make sure you go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the great supplements that I offer. Follow my protocol. Stack the supplements the way I tell you. Slow down that aging process. Boost up that immune system. And be prepared for the fall and the winter. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.